talk is about semantification of genealogy research. That's if you are interested in what your ancestors are. Some of you might know that we did the Royal Family Wiki. A few years ago. I'm not sure whether this still works. Oh, it looks good. So this was a wiki I did a few years ago, and I was lucky because, as you're going to see in the talk, I was approached by the CompGen, which is a non-profit organization. If you want to follow this, you can go on the talk page here, and as requested, the slides are available with C here. You should end up in Google Slides, and from there you can simply go to slideshow, and then you should see the same thing. So the first few slides will be about the people and organizations involved. So this is me. If you don't know me yet, you can look me up. Several places to find me on the Bitplan web page, on the RWTH one, or on the Semantic MediaWiki. And you learn a bit about what I do for making money, or what I do for fun. So the PhD is more for fun. I was hired by Aachen University 4 years ago because I'm a Semantic MediaWiki expert. And the contract is over now. Since 1st of October, I'm fully self-employed again. I was there a 75% employed for that time. So that's my company, 25 years old. We do software engineering, software architecture, requirements engineering. I'm much interested in all those things. We switched from Lotus Notes to Semantic MediaWiki many years ago. Since 2015, we've been part of the community here, and we've got the ProfiWiki, which is a solution that goes a different route than anybody else. So you'll find me connected to Java and to Python, while everybody else does PHP. I do some PHP, but only if I'm forced to. I like other programming languages better. Getting on copy of Wikidata is something I do, and I do research on that. As you seen, the topic of my PhD is semantification of use cases or workflows. And here's one. This is the non-profit association CompGen e.V. It's a German association. They've been founded 35 years ago, and they do citizen science. So what they do a lot is taking stuff that you find out there if you research for your ancestors and digitizing it. So one of the big projects they did was taking the loss list, like people that were missed or killed in World War I, which is like millions and millions of people. Took them 4 years to do that, with 800 people, and I think they can be proud of that. The show is changing these days, so they did tombstones and whatnot, and they have a lot of stuff to offer to others. So in Halle, where we had a meeting recently for citizen science, they were saying, okay, we share our stuff by default, while most of the research organizations had a hard time in the past doing that, and you'll learn about a term for that in a minute. But without further ado, let's dive into the thing with the questions theory or example first. So who would like to learn the theory first? Who's interested in the example first? Yeah, that's the majority. I love this. In Halle, most people were interested in this theory. So I'm going to skip the theory and go right into the example, and then go back to the theory and tell you what the theory is about. Georg Fertig is a professor that is also one of the presidents of the association CompGen e.V. Asked me, could you do some browsing in the address books of Weimar 1851, 1853, and do some micro genealogy using your computer science knowledge? Maybe you will find some serendipity diamonds, and while browsing there's going to have something interesting. I love the way he gave me this task in a very open way and said, just do something. Let's see what happens if you do that. So we went and started in the archives. I got some address books from the association in Parquet format. And actually my wife and I, when we went to Halle, we stepped via Weimar and spent a day there. And we can report on what happened there. And also in the archive of Thuringia, I looked up, are there any records on Frauentor, Frauenplan in that time? And the answer was no. The only thing I could find was from 1835. Somebody called Holzhauer, who was a court servant, bought a house there. So I reckon if he bought the house in 1835, he might still have been living with his family there in 1851. I might find him in Gedbas4all. Let's see whether that worked. But before we do that, what are you going to expect from this in theory? So what is semantics and semantification? That's my research topic. And why should we semantify things? Because we've got the Semantic MediaWiki, so obviously there is some semantics in there. And if we want to go that route, we make it a verb. It's going to be an action. Go from what you have to something that is in Semantic MediaWiki. That's semantification. What do you need for that? You need a knowledge graph for that. Or you might or might not follow the FAIR principles. And then I'm offering you named parameterized queries. That's something new. Saying, why should you go with those crazy SMW-Ask queries that nobody understands and have a very hard syntax? Just ask in natural language and say, okay, my query has a name, it's got some parameters, and I don't care what the technology is. You might know about the open world closed world assumption. You might want to know what faceted search is. We need to look into federated queries. And maybe you're going to use artificial intelligence. And all that in 12 minutes. No, it's not quite true. How many minutes do I still have, Bernard?
Yeah, 12.
You see, I'm used to that. Last time I also had like 15 minutes, and then Georg Fertig told everybody that I think he talked about the same 5 minutes before I could talk about it, and then we're only 12 minutes left. I've done the same talk in 7 minutes, so chances are we'll do it in 12 minutes. Should be possible. First step, what is semantics? Semantics has to do with meaning, so you need to look into the semiotic triangle. You have to look into a symbol. That's a symbol for a castle. You know, this guy, Mr. Holzhauer, he worked in a castle. This castle. So that is the actual symbol. This is Schloss Weimar. And then everybody of you might have a different idea of it. That's the third part. What concept do you have of a castle? And then I will have to mention that the picture there of your cloud castle was done by artificial intelligence is something you can get for cheap these days. Next thing we do is, if we have this idea of working with symbols, and we want symbols that the computer understands, so what we think about this castle has to be in the computer soon. So how do we do that? We need a knowledge graph, which is consisting of vertices and edges. Think of edges as links. And basically, the triple, the subject, predicate, object concept is what we need to build those knowledge graphs. In Semantic MediaWiki, that's pretty simple. Any of your pages is a subject or an object. And the predicate is a link between the pages, and those links between the pages are done in a semantic way. Either by putting them in a template and saying, okay, this page is linked to another way via property, or it's linked directly, which is not so good because then you don't have it in your database. You can still do that. And if you want to put an information like we just got from the archive into your knowledge graph, you need to triple. So you don't want to add a page for Holzhauer. In the 19th century, Mr. Holzhauer probably didn't have a Facebook page, but just imagine he would have one, and that would be like a resource where you can learn more about Mr. Holzhauer. Is Castle-Lanhof is the predicate, that is the information that you want to track, and Schloss Weimar is like the target. And you would imagine Schloss Weimar has its own webpage, and maybe a Wikipedia entry and a Wikidata entry. So that triple is the first building block for what we do. If we keep doing that and add lots and lots and lots of these triples, we want to know how we do that. If we do that in a fair way, we have to make that sure that the data is findable. So that's what the code is for there. If you scan that with your smartphone, you'll actually end up on the Wikipedia page of Schloss Weimar. It's accessible. License is okay. You won't have to pay anything to get that. It should be available, so hopefully the Wikimedia Foundation makes sure that the MediaWiki is not down. It should be interoperable. That means you can look at it in HTML fashion and look at the page, or you can do a query on Wikidata or on the wiki and say, give me the information about Schloss Weimar, and you might end up with like the coordinates, the Wikidata item, and the data should be described and come with clear reader. Sorry for the usability having been blocked by the translation. So if you see the original German thing, pardon? 1 minute. So next thing, I only have 1 minute left, you said?
Yes.
No, this is almost impossible. So we've got systematic queries independent of technology in here. So what we want to do is that we find Mr. Holzhauer, which is one of the things we did. So we did this search using the address books and the packet file. Next thing we did was we created a full wiki with pages from the address books from the original wiki. So the original wiki is not a semantic MediaWiki, so we had to semantify it. And if you click on these, you'll get a nice map. And then on the map, you couldn't find the address books. The interesting part is looking at the original address book pages in the non-semantic MediaWiki compared with the semantic ones. Now we want to query all that stuff, and the question is, which technology do we use? Let's ask, like, who knows Ask queries? Who can do Ask queries? A few. SQL? A few more. SPARQL? Almost the same. Gremlin? Cypher? 1.5. Isn't that interesting that the artificial intelligence could do all these examples just like that? This slide was not created by me. You can ask an artificial intelligence to do that for you. So the idea is that we use in the future federated queries, which will hide the details from us. So we'll just do a simple query and say, I don't care where the data comes from. And if we are lucky, we could do that in a way that makes life easier for us. So if you later click on this one, you will end up with a query that shows you items close to Schloss Weimar that are in Wikidata. And the notability guidelines for Wikidata are lower than those for Wikipedia. In Wikipedia, only a few entries are available, but just imagine you would love to see the entry of Mr. Holzhauer who lived in 1851. He's not in Wikipedia. But he's in the data of our genealogy guys. It would be nice to have a federated query to say, could you find all the people that are in the address book of 1851 that have lived close to Schloss Weimar? Since I couldn't do that, I had to go with a different example, and this is the reason why that happened. This is the difference between an open world and closed world assumption. In the open world, we know that there are only claims. In the closed world assumption, you know that your data is or should be complete. Compare your employee list in an organization, which should be complete and must be complete in legal terms, like the employees want that and the employer wants that. That's a closed world, and your database is complete. But like saying, I know all the people that lived in Weimar in 1851, who knows? There might be people that have not even had an address. And you see the problem there. This is going to be interesting here for you, Bernd. You have also worked here with the Stadtarchiv, didn't you?
Yes.
We went to the Stadtarchiv and we wanted to see the file, and it's lost. And we wanted to see it in person, and they are not open on Mondays. So there are certain obstacles which make your world more open. You have to work with data that is simply not there. And you could add it later if you find the file again, or you could reduce it, but the quality and extent of what you can do depends on the digital traces, and most of what people do these days is based on digital traces. They don't go by the original archive information anymore. Now you can keep browsing, so you can go further on. You may find an address there, like this one is actually in Wikipedia, the Frontoir one. Then you can find out who took the picture, that's Mr. Horton. You'll find him in the address book again. But since I'm a bit limited on time, I'm going to the more interesting part quickly now. All this is queryable. So now you've got different types of things, the SQL query, the Ask query, and the SPARQL query, and this is actually what I did as a prototype. I did the GenealogyResearch 2024, which you'll find on one of the links, where you can actually do a query independent of technology, and that's also part of my research. You'll find it as Snap Query, where we do the same thing with Wikidata. And the idea is you only need to know the name of the query and give some parameters and you can do it. This is semantification in terms of I put data into my wiki and now I'm able to query it. But how do you get your data in the wiki in the first place? This is going to be the interesting part that we're going to look at. So we've got two tasks where AI can help us. One is, could you please help me query my data? So in this room it's not a big deal because people know about query languages. You have a question?
No.
Yeah, I'll do that later. Maybe under the assumption that you don't know SQL, how do I get an SQL query about what happens in Frauenplan? So you simply ask your LLM which people lived in the area of Frauenplan, and a few interactions later you end up with a query. This is an SQL query that was actually generated by ChatGPT. It's not a good SQL query, it's native. It only works if you have the exact naming, and if you looked at the example I gave you, Schloss Castellan was written in 3 different ways, so it wouldn't really find like by the name or by the work that people do. But it's a start. At least syntactically it's correct. It's not nonsense. It helps you, and it gives you like a head start on, hey, I can now work with queries, although I never learned SQL. Maybe a few days later you're actually fluent in how to do that. That's for query building. The more interesting part is AI for curation. In Halle, they had a meeting where they told the people how to use their digitization system. So 40 people were in the room and they learned, okay, this is like your image, and for instance this was a school calendar and they had this calendar there, and then people were told, okay, you have to mark this with your cursor and then you type in what it means, and they had been doing that for an hour or so when I arrived with Maria, and I was really late, and within 5 minutes the AI could do more than all the 40 in the room. So I simply took the page and says, could you please create this from that? So it gave me the header columns, gave me all the entries, and the assumption is most of that is pretty much correct. It's probably not perfect, but it's like at least 50, 20, 50, 100 times quicker, and it's 50, 100, 7 times cheaper. So we have to get used to that, and that was a hard message to transfer to the people in Halle, because they've been doing this in manual work for years now, collected millions of data sets, and all of a sudden you says to tell them, okay, we can do that quicker, and we can even do that with this here. This is Fraktur. That's usually considered hard to read. And this here is even worse. This is handwritten. And even that can be read by. There are problems with it, but you can bet that this is an important asset. I'm done. I'm sorry that you have to click most of the stuff yourself, but hopefully you can still ask 1 or 2 questions, and then we can go from there.
No questions? Then, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to leave this here, right?